I don't even know if Mr. Jeepers was his real name or not. Nobody really did. We all called him that because of his famous catchphrase, "Well, Jeepers, that'll be a fun time," or, "Well, Jeepers, your kid looks like he's having fun," etc., etc. You see, Mr. Jeepers owned a little amusement park called Wally World. Go-karts, mini-putt, water slides, climbing rocks, a bunch of stuff for little kids. Now, you may notice I said owned, past tense. Mr. Jeepers got into a lot of trouble in the mid-90s. Why, you ask? Well, let me tell you. Mr. Jeepers was said to be a sexual predator. At least that's what the cops said, but Jeepers swore, hand to God, he was innocent, and that he'd never hurt a kid. But the cameras in the changing room told a very different story. Family changing rooms, men's changing rooms, women's changing rooms, over the urinals, over the toilets, over the showers. All in all, the police pulled 87 cameras off the property and 15 computer hard drives. I heard from my friend's dad at the time, who was a fireman, that they'd found something like 400 hours of kids changing or using the washroom. Now, don't get it wrong, I ain't saying he did it. I'm not saying he didn't. But one thing for sure is, Jeepers disappeared at the end of that summer, and I'm just going off what the story says. So, that same father's friend, who was a fireman, said that one night, 8 of the parents got fed up with waiting for the cops to charge Jeepers, and decided vigilante justice would be the best way to handle him. I know, right? How very Nightmare on Elm Street of them. So they went to Jeepers' house and got him to the door. Then they knocked him out with a taser and took him back to Wally World. This is where some of the stories go a little off the rails. Some say they drowned him in the wave pool slowly over an 8-hour period by tying his feet and ankles to a cinder block, then placing a life vest on him to progressively make the waves lower and higher. Others say they dropped him off the 4-story water slide. But the worst one, I heard they did stuff to him that's better left to the imagination, and the video exists somewhere online to this day. I've never seen it. Hell, I don't think I really want to. But one thing was for sure, Mr. Jeepers was never seen or heard of again. The police didn't do much of a bang-up job looking for him either, or his killers, but that's not the strangest part. So the 8 parents who disposed of Mr. Jeepers died off soon after Jeepers' disappearance. Mr. and Mrs. Thompson were killed in Hawaii by a rogue wave on a sailboat. The Werners died of an accidental drowning in their pool together one night. The Mackenzies died falling from a water tower on a drunken dare. 4 stories. I mean, what are the chances they fell 4 stories to their death? Last, but certainly not least, were the Hoffmans. The Hoffmans were a very wealthy family in town. They owned one, if not the most profitable construction company of the day. They bought Wally World and were going to tear it down so, in their words, people could move on from the terrible tragedy. According to police, there was just one problem. A video was found in the Hoffman's house of Mrs. Hoffman strangling Mr. Hoffman with a broomstick while he slept, and she was later found tied to a cinder block at the bottom of their pool. The coroner said he never found any defensive wounds of any type, and there was no sign of a struggle in the house, according to the police. Hell, when the cops got there, after Mr. Hoffman's bloated corpse had gotten so ripe that the neighbors could smell it, they had said that Mr. Hoffman was still laying in bed, blankets over him like he just laid there and let her do it. The video shows the same thing. Apparently Mrs. Hoffman walked up to her husband, his eyes open, and he had just opened his mouth. She then forced the broomstick down his throat until he stopped breathing. Then Mrs. Hoffman walked out of the room, and a splash is heard in the background. It turned out later that it was 2 of the janitors at Wally's World, Mike Milligan and Sean Avery, that had set up all the cameras, and they were selling the videos to the highest bidders. Mr. Jeepers' computer was found to have nothing on it, and all the video evidence was found in the janitor's office later on. They both got 20 years for the videos and distribution. Mr. Jeepers got an official apology from the town, and a plaque placed up on Wally World's main gate. "Happiest man alive, we miss you, Mr. Jeepers," was what it read. They reopened Wally World about a month ago after 15 years of being closed. The kids that go there now say there's a strange feeling, and even the parents say there's something off about the place. I took my kid there a few days ago, and I know for a fact there was a weird feeling in one of the men's washrooms. It was where the parents had apparently done in Mr. Jeepers, and I could have sworn I heard Jeepers coming from one of the stalls, but there was no one in there, except for me.
Good evening, everyone. It's me, Dr. Plague. Thank you so much for joining me for tonight's video. If you enjoy the channel, why not go ahead and subscribe? Maybe hit that notification bell so you don't miss any of the spooky stuff we do here. Maybe leave a comment too if you feel so inclined. Me, and of course the algorithm, always like when you interact. How about another video? I'm sure you could be down for that. Why not click on one of the videos above and get a little more spooky today? If you'd be interested in getting a copy of my latest book, there's a link below. There's also a link to my Reddit page where you can read some of my other stories that I've put out. Before we go, let's go ahead and thank our wonderful patrons. Thanks to Janet for being our Spooky Skeleton tier contributor. And thanks to Xaronana, Emily Coltsfoot, Leslie Lou Riddle, Martha, and Marianne Schuler for being our Ghostly Reader tier contributors. Thanks to you all. We just couldn't do the show without you. If you'd like to support the show, then I always recommend you come on down to Patreon. For just $5 a month, you can take advantage of all the wonderful things we do there. There's all kinds of unique content that you only get if you're part of my Patreon, so come on down and see what all the fuss is about. And as always, thanks for stopping by. Dr. Plague, signing off. Have a wonderful evening.